The doctor said prepare for the worst, but God said otherwise. I never thought a single sentence could shatter your entire world until Dr. Hayes looked me in the eyes and said it. Mrs. Peterson, we need to prepare for the worst. The words didn't echo, they detonated. Everything around me blurred except his face, which became painfully sharp. I could see every line of concern, every careful word forming on his lips. My hands gripped the cold metal armrest of the hospital chair, knuckles white, as if holding on would somehow stop reality from collapsing. The fluorescent lights hummed above me. The antiseptic smell burned my nostrils. And somewhere in the distance, machines beeped their steady rhythm while my heart hammered in irregular panic. I should probably tell you who I am, but in that moment I wasn't thinking about names or introductions. I was thinking about breath, my own breath, and how suddenly fragile it felt. How many breaths did I have left? Would I see another summer, another birthday? The questions came fast, crashing over me like waves, and I was drowning in a doctor's office on a Tuesday afternoon. My name is Sarah Peterson, and I'm 34 years old. At least that's what my driver's license says. But sitting in that office, I felt ancient and newborn all at once. Ancient because my body had betrayed me, newborn because I was entering a world I never wanted to know existed. Dr. Hayes kept talking, his mouth moving in what seemed like slow motion. Stage 4, he said. Aggressive. Malignant. Words that belonged to other people's stories, not mine. I taught second grade. I volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends. I made terrible jokes that made my husband David groan. Cancer wasn't supposed to be part of my narrative, yet here it was, written into my cells like a dark prophecy. The doctor slid papers across his desk: treatment options, survival statistics, support group information. Each document felt like a shovel digging my grave deeper. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but my throat had closed up. Fear does that. It steals your voice, right when you need it most. I don't remember walking to my car. I only remember standing in the parking lot, keys dangling from my hand, staring at nothing. Around me, life continued its normal rhythm. A mother buckled her toddler into a car seat. 2 nurses laughed about something as they headed toward the entrance. A delivery truck rumbled past. The world kept spinning while mine had just stopped. I finally climbed into my car and sat there, engine off, hands trembling on the steering wheel. The diagnosis paper sat on the passenger seat like an unwanted companion. I picked it up, read it again, hoping the words had somehow changed. They hadn't. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Malignant, metastatic, poor prognosis. Clinical words for a death sentence. My vision blurred with tears I'd been holding back since leaving Dr. Hayes' office. They came now, hot, angry, desperate tears that left my face wet and my chest aching. God, I whispered into the empty car, where are you? But heaven felt silent, painfully, terrifyingly silent. Telling David was harder than hearing the diagnosis myself. I drove home slowly, rehearsing different ways to say it, knowing none would soften the blow. When I walked through our front door, he was in the kitchen making dinner, humming along to music playing from his phone. He looked so happy, so normal, so unaware that I was about to shatter his world too. Hey, babe, he called out, smiling that crooked smile I fell in love with years ago. How was the appointment? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. He noticed immediately. The smile faded. He turned off the stove and walked toward me, concern flooding his face. Sarah, what did the doctor say? The words came out broken, jagged. It's cancer, stage 4, it's bad, David, it's really bad. I watched him process it, shock, denial, fear, grief, all flashing across his face in seconds. Then his arms were around me, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. We stood there in our kitchen, holding each other while dinner burned on the stove, and our future crumbled around us. That night, we lay in bed staring at the ceiling, hands clasped between us. Neither of us slept. We talked in whispers about things we'd always meant to do: travel to Ireland, renovate the bathroom, plant roses in the backyard. Plans that now felt like fantasies. We'll fight this, David said, his voice thick with determination and fear. We'll beat it. I wanted to believe him. I squeezed his hand tighter and closed my eyes, but all I saw was Dr. Hayes' face delivering that terrible sentence. Prepare for the worst. Around 3 in the morning, I got up and walked to the bathroom. I stared at my reflection under the harsh light. I looked the same brown eyes, same freckles across my nose, same scar on my chin from a childhood fall. But inside, everything had changed. Inside, something deadly was growing, spreading, plotting my destruction. I touched my stomach, wondering how something I couldn't see or feel could be killing me. My reflection stared back, offering no answers, no comfort. The treatment started 2 weeks later. Chemotherapy, a word I'd heard but never understood until it entered my body. The first session took hours. I sat in a room full of other patients, all of us connected to IV poles, poison dripping into our veins to kill the poison already inside us. David sat beside me the whole time, holding my hand, trying to smile when I looked at him. But I saw the fear in his eyes. Everyone sees cancer patients as brave warriors, but nobody talks about the terror. The constant wondering if this treatment will work or just make your last days miserable. The fear of pain, of losing yourself piece by piece, of becoming unrecognizable. I watched the clear liquid flow through the tube into my arm and wondered if this was hope or just prolonging the inevitable. An older woman across from me caught my eye and smiled, a sad, knowing smile that said, "Welcome to the club nobody wants to join." I smiled back weakly, and in that moment we were sisters in suffering. The side effects arrived like uninvited guests who refused to leave. First came the nausea, a constant, rolling sickness that made everything taste like metal. Then the exhaustion, heavy and complete like my bones had turned to lead. I'd wake up tired, spend the day tired, go to bed exhausted, and repeat. But the worst was watching my hair fall out. I knew it would happen. The doctors warned me. But knowing didn't prepare me for the reality of standing in the shower with handfuls of my own hair, watching it swirl down the drain like it was never mine to begin with. I shaved my head before it could fall out completely. David helped, his hands gentle, tears streaming down both our faces. When we finished, I stared at my reflection. A stranger with a bare scalp and hollow eyes stared back. "You're still beautiful," David whispered. But I didn't feel beautiful. I felt like a ghost, already halfway gone. That night, I wore a scarf to bed, unable to face my own reflection in the dark. Weeks blurred into months. Treatment after treatment, scan after scan, hopping for improvement but finding none. The cancer wasn't shrinking. If anything, Dr. Hayes said it was stable, which in cancer language meant not getting better, just not getting immediately worse. My body became a battlefield, and I was losing ground. I stopped teaching. My energy couldn't handle full days with 20 energetic 7-year-olds. The school threw me a small goodbye party, cake, cards, tears. The kids made me drawings with messages like, "Get well soon, Mrs. Peterson," and "We miss you." I smiled and thanked them, but inside I was screaming. What if I never came back? What if "get well soon" was just a polite lie we tell dying people? David took over everything at home. Cooking, cleaning, managing bills, holding me when the pain got too bad. He never complained, never showed frustration, but I saw how tired he was becoming. Cancer doesn't just kill the patient. It exhausts everyone who loves them. One Thursday night, around 2 a.m, I had a complete breakdown. The pain in my abdomen had intensified to the point where even breathing hurt. I sat on the bathroom floor, rocking back and forth, tears streaming down my face. David found me there, wrapped in agony and despair. "I can't do this anymore," I sobbed. "I can't, David, it hurts too much, I'm so tired." He sat beside me on the cold tile floor and held me. He didn't tell me to be strong or to keep fighting. He just held me while I fell apart. "God, please," I whispered into the darkness. "If you're real, if you're listening, please help me. I don't want to die. Please don't let me die." The prayer came from somewhere deep inside me, from a place I didn't know existed. I wasn't particularly religious. We went to church occasionally, believed in God in a distant, casual way. But desperation has a way of making believers out of skeptics. In that moment, I needed something bigger than medicine, stronger than hope, more powerful than cancer. The next morning, I woke up surprised I'd slept at all. David had carried me back to bed sometime during the night. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, warm and gentle. I lay there feeling different somehow. Not healed, the pain was still there. But something had shifted. A quiet peace had settled over me, unexpected and unexplainable. I reached for my phone and on impulse searched for churches nearby. One caught my attention, Grace Community Church, just 15 minutes away. Their website showed a smiling pastor and the words, "Everyone welcome, exactly as you are." That Sunday, David and I went. I wore a soft beanie to cover my bald head and barely had enough energy to walk from the parking lot to the entrance. But we went. The service was simple, warm, genuine. Pastor Michaels spoke about God's faithfulness in impossible situations. His words felt like they were meant specifically for me. When he said, Your situation may look hopeless, but God specializes in hopeless situations. Something inside me stirred. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope after all. We started going every Sunday, then Wednesdays too. I'd sit in the back, weak and tired, but soaking in every word like my soul was desperately thirsty. People at the church were kind without being pitying. They prayed for me without making it awkward. They brought meals and offered help without making us feel like charity cases. One woman, Margaret, became particularly close to me. She was a cancer survivor herself, 12 years in remission. She'd sit with me after services, sharing her story, listening to mine. "I know it feels like the end," she told me one afternoon over tea. "But sometimes God saves the best miracles for the worst situations. Keep praying, Sarah, keep believing, even when it seems impossible." Her words planted a seed of faith I didn't know I needed. That night I prayed differently, not desperately but expectantly. "God, I don't know how this ends, but I'm choosing to trust you, even if I'm scared. Even if I don't understand, I'm trusting you." 3 months after starting treatment, I returned to Dr. Hayes for another scan. These appointments always filled me with dread, waiting to hear if the poison we were pumping into my body was actually helping or just torturing me for nothing. David and I sat in the waiting room holding hands, both pretending to read magazines neither of us saw. When Dr. Hayes finally called us in, his expression was unreadable. He pulled up my scans on the computer screen, comparing them to previous ones. Silence stretched unbearably. "Well," he finally said, turning to face us, "this is unexpected." My heart stopped. Unexpected good or unexpected bad? "The tumors have shrunk, not dramatically, but measurably. Your markers are down too, not cured, not even close, but this is progress we weren't seeing before." I stared at him, trying to process his words. Progress, shrinking, down. These weren't words I'd heard in months. "What does this mean?" David asked, his voice tight with cautious hope. "It means," Dr. Hayes said slowly, "that something is working. Let's keep doing what we're doing." We left the hospital in a daze. In the parking lot, David suddenly grabbed me and spun me around, laughing and crying at the same time. "Did you hear that? Something is working. Sarah, something is actually working." I laughed too, feeling lighter than I had in months. It wasn't a cure. I wasn't healed. But for the first time since this nightmare began, the trajectory had changed. We were moving in the right direction, even if slowly. That evening at church, I shared the news with Margaret. She hugged me tight and whispered, "This is just the beginning. God isn't done with you yet." Her certainty struck me as odd. She spoke as if she knew something I didn't, as if she could see the ending before it arrived. That night I prayed with new boldness. "God, thank you for this progress, but I'm asking for more. I'm asking for complete healing. I don't know if you work that way anymore, but I'm asking anyway. Please." The months that followed brought gradual but steady improvement. Each scan showed more shrinkage. My energy slowly returned. The pain decreased from unbearable to manageable. I started taking short walks around the neighborhood, then longer ones. David and I would walk hand in hand, talking about the future again, not as a fantasy, but as a real possibility. Dr. Hayes remained professionally cautious, reminding me that pancreatic cancer was tricky, aggressive, unpredictable. But even he couldn't hide his surprise at my progress. "Whatever you're doing," he said during one appointment, "keep doing it." If only he knew the biggest change wasn't medical, it was spiritual. I was praying like never before, reading the Bible daily, attending church consistently, surrounding myself with people of faith. I wasn't just treating my body, I was feeding my soul, and somehow, in ways I couldn't explain, it was making a difference. My faith was growing stronger as my cancer was growing weaker. A coincidence? I didn't think so anymore. 6 months into treatment, something extraordinary happened. I woke up one morning feeling different, not just better, but really different. The constant ache in my abdomen had vanished. The exhaustion that had become my normal state was gone. I sat up in bed without effort, without pain, without the usual heaviness weighing me down. "David," I whispered, shaking him awake. "Something feels different." He bolted upright, immediately alert. "Different bad or different good?" "Good, really good." "I feel normal, like before everything started." We stared at each other, afraid to hope too much but unable to stop hopping. That week I had another scheduled scan. I walked into the hospital with a strange confidence humming in my chest. The technicians ran their tests, took their images, and told me to wait for results. But I already knew. Somehow, deep in my spirit, I knew. God had done something. 2 days later, Dr. Hayes called me into his office. His face wore an expression I'd never seen before, confusion mixed with wonder. "Sarah," Dr. Hayes began, shaking his head slowly, "I've been practicing oncology for 23 years. I've seen unexpected remissions, surprising responses to treatment, statistical outliers. But this..." He turned his computer screen toward me, showing my latest scans side by side with previous ones. "Your tumors have shrunk by over 80%. Your blood markers are nearly normal. The lymph node involvement has resolved." This kind of response to treatment in stage 4 pancreatic cancer is virtually unheard of. Virtually unheard of. Those words echoed in my mind. "What does this mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "It means you're responding to treatment far beyond what we ever expected. If this continues, we might be looking at remission, full remission." The room tilted. David grabbed my hand so tight it almost hurt. Remission. A word I'd stopped allowing myself to even think. Dr. Hayes continued talking about continuing treatment, about cautious optimism, about monitoring carefully. But all I heard was that word echoing. Remission, remission, remission. We drove straight to the church. Pastor Michael was in his office and welcomed us in immediately. Through tears and laughter, we told him the news. He smiled, a knowing, peaceful smile, and said, "I've been praying for this since the day you first walked through those doors. God is faithful, Sarah, always." That Sunday, I shared my testimony with the entire congregation. Standing at the front of the church, wearing a bright scarf covering my still-growing back hair, I told them everything. The diagnosis, the despair, the treatments, the prayers, the progress, the miracle unfolding. People cried openly. Some stood and applauded. Others rushed forward to hug me. Margaret held me the longest, whispering, "I told you God wasn't done with you yet." The celebration felt premature to me. I wasn't cured yet. But Pastor Michael pulled me aside and said something that stuck with me. "Celebrate every victory, Sarah. Don't wait until the war is over to acknowledge the battles God is winning for you." 3 more months passed, 3 more scans, each one better than the last. The cancer was disappearing, shrinking, retreating. Dr. Hayes stopped using words like unexpected and started using words like remarkable and unprecedented. My hair grew back, different texture, but I didn't care. My energy returned fully. I started making plans to return to teaching in the fall. David and I talked about the future again, making real plans instead of wishful dreams. We booked a trip to Ireland for our 10th anniversary. We started that bathroom renovation. I planted roses in the backyard. Life was becoming normal again, but nothing felt normal. Everything felt sacred, precious, miraculous. I'd been given something I thought was lost forever, a future. And I didn't take a single moment for granted. Every sunrise felt like a gift. Every meal tasted better. Every hug from David felt like a treasure. Cancer had stolen so much from me, but in a strange way, it had also given me something, a profound appreciation for life. 9 months after my diagnosis, I walked into Dr. Hayes' office for what I hoped would be my final scan. The routine was familiar now: change into the gown, lie still in the machine, wait for results. But this time felt different. This time felt final. When Dr. Hayes walked in, he was smiling, actually smiling. "Sarah, I've run the tests twice. I've had 2 other oncologists review the scans. I wanted to be absolutely certain before I said this." My heart hammered in my chest. "There is no detectable cancer in your body. None. Your blood work is completely normal. Your scans are clean. You are in complete remission." Complete remission. The words hung in the air like fireworks. David let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't process what I was hearing. "I need to be clear," Dr. Hayes continued, his voice gentle. "We'll monitor you closely. Pancreatic cancer can be tricky. But as of right now, based on every test we have, you are cancer-free." Cancer-free? 2 words I never thought I'd hear. I sat there, stunned into silence, tears streaming down my face. David was beside me, crying too, gripping my hand like he'd never let go. Dr. Hayes handed me tissues, his own eyes suspiciously wet. "I don't say this often," he said quietly, "because I'm a man of science and I deal in probabilities and statistics. But this feels like a miracle." A miracle, he'd said it. Not me, not my church friends, but my oncologist, a man who dealt in facts and data, had used the word miracle. We left the hospital walking on air. In the parking lot, David picked me up and spun me around, both of us laughing and crying at the same time. People probably thought we were crazy, but we didn't care. We'd just been given the most precious gift imaginable: life. a second chance, a future we thought was lost. That evening, we went to church for the midweek service. When I walked in, Margaret took one look at my face and started crying before I even said anything. Pastor Michael asked me to share my news with everyone there. I stood at the front of the small Wednesday night gathering, my voice shaking with emotion. 9 months ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctor told me to prepare for the worst. I was given months to live, maybe a year if treatment worked. Today, that same doctor told me I'm cancer-free, complete remission, no detectable disease. The room erupted. People stood. Applauded, wept, praised God. The joy was overwhelming, contagious, beautiful. I'd come to this church broken and dying. I was leaving healed and alive. Margaret hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "This is what I've been praying for," she whispered. "This is what I knew God would do." How had she known? How had she been so certain when I'd been so full of doubt? Maybe that's what faith is, being certain of what we hope for even when we can't see it yet. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time in months. Just 3 words: God is faithful. The news spread quickly through our community. Former students sent cards. Neighbors brought flowers. The local newspaper even ran a small story about my recovery. But the most meaningful responses came from other cancer patients who reached out, asking for hope, for prayer, for my story. I started visiting other patients at the hospital, with Dr. Hayes's permission, sharing my journey, praying with them, offering the same hope Margaret had given me. Some looked at me with skepticism. Others with desperate hope. I didn't promise them all a miracle like mine. I couldn't. But I could promise them that God was faithful, that prayer mattered, that they weren't alone. One woman, diagnosed with the same cancer I'd had, gripped my hand and asked, "Do you really believe God healed you?" I looked her in the eyes and said with absolute certainty, "Yes, I believe it with every fiber of my being, and I believe He can heal you too." Whether she believed me or not, I saw something shift in her eyes, a tiny spark of hope where there'd been only despair. Year after my diagnosis, David and I stood in our backyard looking at the roses I'd planted. They were blooming, beautiful red flowers that seemed to celebrate life as much as I did. We held hands, watching the sunset paint the sky in oranges and pinks. "A year ago, I thought I'd lost you," David said quietly. "I thought I was going to watch you die and there'd be nothing I could do to stop it." I leaned against him. "A year ago, I thought the same thing. I'd given up, David. I'd accepted death." "What changed?" he asked. I thought about it, the diagnosis, the treatments, the prayers, the community, the faith that grew even as my body weakened, the gradual then sudden turn toward healing. "I started believing that God could do the impossible," I said finally. Not hopping, not wishing, actually believing, and when I believed, everything changed. We stood there as darkness fell, grateful for every moment, every breath, every heartbeat, gifts I'd never take for granted again. They say surviving cancer changes you, and they're right, but not in the ways people expect. I don't wake up every day terrified it'll come back. I don't live in fear anymore. Instead, I wake up grateful. Deeply, profoundly grateful for ordinary things: morning coffee, David's terrible jokes, the sound of rain, the smell of roses, the simple act of breathing without pain. I returned to teaching that fall. Walking back into my classroom felt like coming home. The kids welcomed me with a giant banner that read, "Welcome back, Mrs. Peterson," and I cried happy tears. Everything felt different now, more precious, more meaningful. Even the challenging days felt like blessings because I was alive to experience them. I continued attending Grace Community Church, continued visiting cancer patients, continued sharing my story whenever someone asked. Because my story isn't just about me, it's about what God can do when we trust Him with our impossible situations. It's about hope when there should be none. About life when death seemed certain. About miracles that still happen today. If you're reading this and facing your own impossible situation, whether it's cancer or something else entirely, I want you to know something. The doctor may have told you to prepare for the worst. The diagnosis may look hopeless. The statistics may be terrifying. But God is bigger than diagnoses, stronger than statistics, more powerful than any disease. I'm not saying everyone gets healed the way I did. I don't understand why some receive physical healing and others don't. That mystery is beyond me. But I do know this: God is faithful, prayer matters, hope is real. And miracles still happen. Don't give up, don't stop fighting, don't lose faith. Your story isn't over yet. Mine almost was, and look at me now, alive, healthy, whole, 2 years cancer-free and counting. The doctor said prepare for the worst, but God said otherwise. And when God speaks, even death has to listen. My name is Sarah Peterson, and I'm living proof that impossible isn't in God's vocabulary. Whatever you're facing today, remember that.